Thomson's Scaffold User Training Presentation. As you probably already know, scaffolds are a huge part of the construction industry. An estimated 2.3 million workers, or 65% of the construction industry, work on scaffolds frequently. Protecting these workers from scaffold-related accidents would prevent 4,500 injuries and 50 deaths every year. A scaffold is defined as an elevated, temporary work platform. There are three basic types of scaffolds: supported scaffolds, suspended scaffolds, and a final group called other scaffolds, which includes mobile scaffolds. Supported scaffolds consist of one or more platforms supported by rigid, load-bearing members, such as poles, legs, frames, and outriggers. Suspended scaffolds, which are less common, are one or more platforms suspended by ropes or other non-rigid overhead support. Finally, other scaffolds, principally man lifts, personnel hoists, etc., which are sometimes thought of as vehicles or machinery, but can also be regarded as another type of supported scaffold. Common hazards associated with all scaffolds are falls from elevation due to lack of fall protection, collapse of the scaffold caused by instability or overloading, being struck by falling tools, work materials, or debris, and electrocution, principally due to proximity of the scaffold to overhead power lines. As you've already heard, a competent person is one who is capable of identifying existing and predictable hazards in the surrounding or working conditions which are hazardous or dangerous to employees, and who has the authority to take prompt corrective measures to eliminate them. The competent person plays a vital role in the construction of and work on scaffolds. These are the duties of a scaffold competent person. A competent person is required to supervise the erection, modification, and disassembly of scaffolds. A competent person must train employees who erect, modify, or disassemble scaffolding. And a competent person is required to inspect scaffolding prior to each work shift. A competent person will perform a scaffold inspection. They will determine the status of a scaffold using a green, yellow, or red tag. A green tag is a 100% complete scaffold ready for use. A yellow tag is an incomplete but safe-to-use scaffold. A red tag is an unsafe scaffold and may not be used. Generally, a scaffold that is still under construction or in the process of disassembly. No one should climb onto a scaffold or go to work on a scaffold unless it has been inspected and the green or yellow tag is posted and signed by the competent person. Additionally, a scaffold competent person must determine the feasibility and safety of providing fall protection during erection and dismantling of supported scaffolding. He must also determine if scaffold components from different manufacturers can be intermixed. General requirements for scaffolding include capacity. Each scaffold and its components must be capable of supporting without failure its own weight and at least 4 times the maximum intended load applied to it. Frames and panels must be connected by cross, horizontal, or diagonal braces, alone or in combination, which secure vertical members together laterally. As frames are stacked, cross braces must be of such length as will automatically keep the scaffold plumb, level, and square. All brace connections must be secured to prevent dislodging. Remember, scaffold bracing is not designed to be used for climbing. Never use any of the scaffold's bracing as a ladder. Because they may be built in proximity to overhead power lines and because they're often made of metal, scaffolds can put workers at risk of electrocution. This risk can be removed through proper clearance and maintenance. Because metal frame scaffolds are conductive, power tools and cords that may suffer insulation failure can electrify the entire scaffold. This poses a risk of electrocution not just to the worker holding the tool, but to everyone who contacts the scaffold. As a result, all portable electric equipment must be protected by a GFCI, or a ground fault circuit interrupter, or an AEGCP, which is an Assured Equipment Grounding Conductor program. One of the most important aspects to sound scaffold construction is adequate foundations. All scaffolds must be erected with adequate foundations. Casters on rolling scaffolds may be used on concrete only. The casters must be locked into place while work is being performed on the scaffold. Other forms of adequate foundations include base plates and mud sills, which must be used in soil or asphalt. This image shows a scaffold built on a very dangerous, unsound foundation. Scaffolds should never be built on top of cinder blocks as the one shown in the photo is built. Another important aspect of constructing a sound scaffold is making it level and plumb. A scaffold must be plumb and braced to prevent swaying and displacement. The scaffold in this image is far from plumb. Each platform unit on all working levels of scaffolds must be fully planked and decked between the front uprights and the guardrails. The scaffold in this image was not properly planked, and the contractor was cited as a result. Scaffold platforms and walkways must be at least 18 inches wide unless they are used in areas that the employer can demonstrate are so narrow that they must be less than 18 inches wide. In such cases, the platforms must be as wide as feasible. To prevent slippage, platforms must be cleated or otherwise restrained at each end, or else overlap centerline support by at least 6 inches. When a supported scaffold reaches a height that is more than 4 times its minimum base dimension, it must be restrained by guys, ties, or braces to prevent it from tipping. Although the use of stamped or marked scaffold-grade lumber is not required, it is up to the competent person to determine that the scaffold boards meet the intended load capacity. The best practice is to use the graded and stamped lumber. Scaffold boards must be in good condition, and damaged and defective boards must be removed from service. Plywood is not acceptable in lieu of scaffold boards. This image shows the result of poor scaffold construction practices. Not only will the responsible party face financial losses, the potential for injuring or even killing other employees is very high. One of the biggest potential hazards of working from scaffolding is falling. Each employee on a scaffold more than 10 feet above a lower level must be protected from falling to that lower level. Fall protection consists of either personal fall arrest systems or guardrail systems that meet OSHA requirements. This is yet another image of poor scaffold safety practices. Note, the workers are not using proper fall protection. Although there are many hazards associated with working from scaffolds, scaffold work can be safe work. Always use great care when working from a scaffold and when constructing a scaffold. And remember, do not take shortcuts.